from their premises, so essentially to move my bakery over there. And I was just calling to see how that would all shake out in terms of like classification and food licensing and all that sort of stuff. Right. Okay. I thought it might be a little more complicated because I'm currently class 3. Oh no, I'll be moving on premises. Yeah. That's okay. Sure thing. So basically, I will just apply as though it's my own premises. Okay, cool. That's a lot smoother than I thought. Yeah, I'll jump on the website and I'll punch something through and I'm ready. Thank you so much. Appreciate your help. Cheers, buddy. So I was just in a little meeting, and so obviously didn't film because I didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable. But I just had a little meeting, chat of sorts. I've had a few actually, but now it's actually going somewhere. It's likely, I have found a permanent premises for the bakery, which is really cool and exciting. Well, I wasn't looking for one. I was, but I wasn't actively looking for one and wasn't expecting to move my bakery, my kitchen, anytime soon. But there's a local coffee roastery, local-ish. It's about 10 minutes away from where I'm currently situated. And they reached out and offered me essentially a sublet, I don't know how to say it, on their currently unused kitchen. They've been buying my bread, and they're really nice gentlemen, and they reached out and asked if I might be interested in moving down. So we're currently in that process. And so I'm thinking, as it stands, I'll be moving down there late April to begin trading from there early May. I think I've also mentioned in a previous entry that I'm doing I'm participating in a local food festival coming up in early May. So my ambition is to move to the new kitchen where I have lots of space and a proper setup so I can make a lot more product. And that seems like just opportune timing, like a good deadline to set, because if I don't set a deadline, I'm just going to drag my heels. That tends to be how I operate. As with most things, it's kind of apprehension inducing. I don't mind baking out of my home kitchen, but it's not without its challenges. That being said, it's also awfully convenient having your bakery premises right next to your house, or in your house, I suppose, in this case, because it makes those sorts of things pretty easy to manage. I had always assumed I would have to just build my own outbuilding, granny flat, whatever you want to call it, put a kitchen in a separate building on my property at home, which of course would mean I couldn't retail. It gets really complicated. I've spoken to my council about it, and I don't even know if it's possible actually. Liability becomes really sketchy if you're having customers come onto your property that's zoned as residential. We don't want to go there. So retail wouldn't have been an option, which would essentially mean I was just doing deliveries and wholesale, which would have worked. But I always romanticized the idea of having a space where I could retail out of. And that, I don't know if I mentioned that, where I'd be moving, they have store frontage, like a retail space. So yeah, if I could retail from this space with a little wholesale with online sales kind of blended in, I think that's a really cool little sort of hybrid model that I have stumbled upon. But as with all things, I'm sort of just seeing how it goes, flying by the seat of my pants, potholes. So there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of things we just need to figure out, and that goes for the actual retail side of it as well. So just got to go for it, hey? In part, I've been sort of talking myself out of the reality of the situation. Psychologically, if I downplay it and pretend it's not happening, kind of lowers the stress in some weird way. But I think you just have to give it a go and see what happens. The space is suitable. My landlords are very, very kind and generous and patient and relaxed, which is very important to me. So by all accounts, there is absolutely nothing to worry about. I'd rather go for it and just say I went for it than to regret not trying. So we're going to try. We'll see what happens. Worst case scenario, I end the lease and move my stuff back or sell stuff, So yeah, exciting if not slightly scary times. That's a tongue twister. So welcome to Friday. Definitely my busier of my 2 production days at the moment. The second wholesaler that's come on board is a little cafe. And so I'm making some on menu, but some off menu items as well. Particularly like a big, oversized sandwich loaf for use, for retail purposes, to make sandwiches and that kind of thing. They've ordered some English muffins and stuff as well, which is really cool. I'm excited to see how that all goes. But I made an egregious error. Is that an oxymoron? I made an error with my calculations for starter prep, and I ended up a long way short of the starter I need for my Easter buns. So that's really thrown a curveball into the works this morning. Spanner in the works. And it's just so frustrating. This time yesterday, or more or less this time yesterday, I was visiting my new potential premises, to go and be a real baker in a real bakery with lots of space and professional things. And then this morning I'm screwing up the basics of sourdough. It's that old adage, I reckon, of it's definitely true of baking, and I think it would be true of most pastimes, most crafts that can be either a hobby or a profession. The difference between an amateur and a professional, or hobbyist and a professional, is the ability to correct for mistakes, more than it is just depth and breadth of knowledge, right? I don't want to say it's easy, but it's not insurmountably difficult to know the technical aspects of making bread or cabinet making. Seemingly, you're constantly correcting for something that's gone slightly off kilter. And as someone who gets very frustrated at themselves when making mistakes, it's not necessarily the most conducive arrangement when it comes to my patience and I guess my mental health more broadly. I was doing my other mixes with that starter I'd mixed for this morning, and I could see, I'm looking at it and I'm going, I'm sure that's not enough starter for what I need. It boiled down to an error in my spreadsheets, because I use spreadsheets as most bakers do these days for calculating their percentages of their mixes. And I fixed the mistake, but it's been made now, so. So I did manage to keep the camera rolling through much of this bake, but I decided not to do much talking, and that was simply just to minimize distractions and hopefully minimize mistakes, which was the last thing I needed given the morning I'd had. So I just tried to stay focused, move through the motions, and deliver everything that I needed to make that day to a reasonable standard. Here I'm just moving through all the dough that I mixed first thing that morning, shaping some high tops that will be baked later that afternoon. And on a busy day like this, there's a lot of jumping between tasks. So my second lot of doughs are completing their bulk ferment and are needing my attention, while at the same time I'm also needing to get things in the oven, such as the aforementioned high tins, the English muffins, the sandwich loaves. But I think as well this is a bit of a window into what it's really like spending a day in the bakery when I'm left to my own devices. And once you get into a nice rhythm, it can be quite a meditative and relaxed process. It's a nice space to be when everything's going well. And I just wanted to show you that despite the slip-ups, the Easter buns did turn out okay, as well as the rest of the bake, despite maybe another slip-up or two. Hello and welcome back to my life spent in a car. I know I've done a lot of car cam in this entry, but I suppose it's been the reality of this week. First thing this morning is we're headed out a fair distance to my newest wholesaler, a little cafe, which is a bit of a hike. But they're lovely people and it's a lovely little cafe, and I'm thrilled they've taken a chance on me. It's just been a brutal bake. It's been a real tricky one, man. As I mentioned, mix up with my starter, so I had to delay making the Easter buns, and I normally like to bake them last thing in the evening before I go to bed. And that's relative, right? I like to get them done 5, 6, 7 o'clock at the latest, so I can get to bed at a reasonable hour, because I got to be back up early to bake off the main load of bread. Because I had to refeed the starter and push back the process a few hours, I didn't get to bed until about 10 o'clock, which for a baker who has to be up again at 3 o'clock the next morning, that's late. You know, that's the lion's share of what I've made during production, and is the lion's share of the income. It's my reputation. I'm happy to make the buns and maybe do the occasional scrolls and sweets and other bits, but I consider myself primarily a bread maker. And if I screw up my bread, I've got a problem. And it was just there's all these little kind of mistakes, and this ties into the whole theme of this video, this entry, which is potentially moving to a permanent premises, because it's becoming really difficult for me to actually operate in my home space with, I guess, the ambition I have in terms of how much I want to make and the variety I want on the menu, because it's like managing my home and my work at the same time. It's an active job, obviously, and sort of trying to circumnavigate my home while also trying to run a bakery. It's been very difficult. Well, it's been becoming very difficult doing it as often as I'm doing it now, and with the volume I'm doing now. So, in a nutshell, I'm glad to be moving, but it's just I'm finding it very easy to get distracted because there's home stuff at the same time, and maybe this is part of my personality. I get distracted by the next thing, like the next most immediate thing, instead of trying to stay focused. And Like, for example, it's not the biggest deal in the world because I had enough bread made, but I managed to burn one of my honey and oat loaves because I just forgot it in the oven, which was preheating for the next load. For those of you who aren't familiar, you're supposed to score your dough before it goes in the oven so it has room to expand. My first load of bread, I forgot to do that, but I had remembered just in the nick of time. And I guess the bread gods were on my side this morning because I had the presence of mind to quickly pull them back out, quickly score them and get them back in. And somehow they still turned out okay. All these silly little mistakes, probably caused by the fact that I was really tired from not having enough sleep. I'm still tired now. I haven't had enough sleep. I would reason that I made such an egregious rookie mistake because I was tired, because I didn't get enough sleep, because I screwed up the starter for the hot cross buns 2 nights ago. So a mistake made Thursday evening, which is when I have my last feed for the starter, which is ready about 5 o'clock the next morning, was off. You get it. It's just a bunch of silly little things that add up, and fatigue and stress really don't help. So, but you know, thinking through it now, it's also, in a sense, a bit of a catch-22 because I had a few distinct moments during this bake because it was so stressful and mistake-ridden. I don't know if I seriously contemplated, but I did contemplate the notion of selling my equipment and calling it quits. And I know that sounds dramatic, but because I'm on this precipice of, essentially, you either go all in or you fold, right? That's where I'm at. Either I pay the sublease and the council fees and get the equipment I need and move all my gear, at which point I'm all in and on running this bakery, or I say, no, that's going to be too hard, and I fold, which I shouldn't do. I should go for it. But you know, I reflected on it this morning, and part of me is glad, because for all the foolish mistakes I made, I've still got a massive load of bread in the car, and I've met my wholesale requirements. I have enough for all my deliveries. Everyone who's pre-ordered has their bread in there to a decent enough standard. So for all the screw-ups, I've done all right. Moreover, I recovered from mistakes I wouldn't have been able to recover from sort of, I don't know, this time last year. So like, point of comparison, last year's Easter buns, if I'd screwed up my starter like that, I probably would have just rage quit and refunded the portion of buns I couldn't make for those who ordered. I'm glad I managed to push through and working at other bakeries and, you know, gathering knowledge and skills to recover from the foibles, which kind of, to come full circle, bodes well, I suppose, when it comes to potentially moving and going all in on this bakery full time. So it's been an interesting 24 hours, let's say that much, shall we? I've got these tomato plants here that I'm going to try putting in the floor of the greenhouse here. It's recently been upgraded, this very homespun greenhouse of mine. It's got insulating hard plastic on the outside now, so I'm hoping it might stay warm enough over the next month or so for these to produce a little bit, because they're outgrowing this pot. You might be able to tell I don't really fit in here. But we make it work. The greener thumbs among you will notice that these are already starting to fruit. And I know that's not ideal for a transplant to disturb the root systems now, but there's not much of the season left, and I don't think they were going to do well in that pot anyway, so figured it was worth a try. I'm still getting over 30 degrees here in the greenhouse, so fingers crossed, eh? Also trying some, I hope you can see this, some various leafy greens, lettuces, spinaches, silver beets, or chard as you might know. No, haven't had any luck in here previous seasons in terms of winter growth, but that was because I had really crap thin soft plastic on here. So maybe I'll get a bit more out of the season, we'll see. It's all an experiment. I mean, I'm not run off my feet. I do like to spend time out here. I was actually talking to Mum about all the insanity of the last couple weeks, and realizing why I've been feeling a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, and that I haven't been able to spend much time enjoying myself, enjoying my life. And it's just because I'm trying to do too many things at once, or rather too many things have come upon me at once, which I've accepted, but it's been wearing me down for sure. But I've resolved just to get through the big bake this Easter, then focus on getting my stuff ready for the move, and then from there I can focus on the big food festival I've got coming up. So I was going to spend a lot of today going up to the hardware store and buying some equipment I'll be needing for the new space, but it was just too much to think about at once, and so I've just shrunk down my focus and I feel a lot better. So this may be one of the only sunny days left for the foreseeable future, so enjoy it while it lasts, eh? Whoop.